ever. You know what else is funny to me about that is just how insane us 90s basketball fans are for that kind of like if Michael Jordan did a speaking tour, I think I'd go.
Totally.
And he has no interest. Like, but if he went and talked with every finals person he beat, like he went and talked with John Stockton.
Oh my gosh.
I'd be like, okay,
that'd be a must see.
I'll watch that. I want to see what both of them say.
Absolutely.
Break down the series, break down the Knicks Bulls series. Wouldn't you watch that?
I don't think there would be anything more entertaining than Jordan talking to Isaiah Thomas. I think that would be.
They'll never be able to get that.
That's a conversation for another topic.
Yeah, you and I in the same building. That's just not possible. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of The Hoop and the Harm. As we always call it, it's like a soap opera. Basketball's like a soap opera. It has its ups and downs. And today we're going to be going over the Eastern Conference as it moves towards the Eastern Conference Finals. We have Indiana facing off against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland hasn't played in a very long time. And for those that don't remember, the last time they played, they were putting up a 50-point win over Miami. So not only have they not played, when they did play, they didn't play any. They played in the YMCA league.
Right.
I mean, there was no hard fouls.
Nope.
There was nobody like competitively playing them.
There was no getting tired or like, feeling like, nervous or anything like that. It was coasting.
And Indiana, which just beat Milwaukee, and I think my text was the Bucks did what the Bucks pulled the Bucks.
The Bucks pulled the Bucks.
They literally had no reason to lose that game. They were ahead. They were ahead significantly, and it was just a complete and utter. They made you proud to be a Knicks fan.
I did think to myself, well, it's not that bad, I guess.
Because at the end of the day, that was a really bad ending. I couldn't believe it. And then I was like, I was okay with it because I figured Indiana was going to win. And we both picked Indiana to win in like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So it worked out for what I picked. But at the same time, when I reflect on it, I'm like, that was a brutal loss.
It could have been a little closer and they would have went back to Milwaukee. It would have been interesting. But
this would have been interesting. But here we are.
I still think Indiana wins. So.
No, I don't disagree. Indiana's going to win regardless if they win or not. But the fact that's how they lost, or that's how it happened, it's kind of comical. So we're on this series, and this is interesting to me because now we finally get to see what we've asked the question of. We know what Boston had. We know the pedigree of Boston. We've seen them win a championship. We've seen them in the playoffs. This Cleveland team's fairly new to be in the first seed. And I think the other problem that I kind of had with them going into the playoffs was you saw some kind of like, they really weren't shining. They had some moments. So we were like, we'll see what happens. But they had the significant advantage of being the 1 versus the 10, basically.
Right.
So that was a huge advantage. So they did what exactly you should do. They beat down on the team that shouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
So now they face a team that, for all intents and purposes, I think Indiana is a legitimate team.
I do too.
They legitimately have scores. They legitimately do everything. So I'm playing tennis in my mind on this game because I was excited about this round of the Eastern Conference. I wasn't excited about the first round. I was excited about this round. We get to see some really good teams playing each other on a good caliber, which we did not see in the first round of games.
Right.
So Cleveland, Indiana, your first impressions. Cleveland obviously is the 1 and Indiana is the 4. And here we are.
Yeah. So I tried to make the case that Miami could get a game from Cleveland in that first round because Cleveland started showing signs, I thought, towards the end of the regular season, the last month of the regular season. Like, they lost some games. They lost some games, and they didn't look like the world beaters that they had been the whole year. They looked a little vulnerable, and so I gave a little credit to Miami's coach because I still think he's the best coach in the NBA, Eric Spoelstra, but Cleveland showed that they're the number one seed for a reason, and they didn't mess around with Miami. Indiana, I think, is a team that could prove that what I was trying to say to be true. Not that Indiana is going to steamroll them or even beat them, but I think Indiana is a high-powered offense, man. They have so many weapons. They can get on some heaters shooting. They play great team offensive basketball. You'll see a lot of distribution going on, a lot of sharing of the wealth when it comes to the scoring and everything, and you don't always know from game to game where it's coming from. So Indiana's been getting significantly better. I think and I think we kind of alluded to this earlier shows. If the regular season had gone on a little longer, like maybe another month, they probably would have caught the Knicks, and they maybe would have ended with the third seed. So you're looking at a very, very good team here. So yeah, I think I'm expecting a competitive series. I'm expecting six. I will say 6 games. I'm a little hesitant to say 7 because I still think Cleveland is really, really, really good, and their defense is excellent. And their defense is excellent, and I think their offense can certainly keep up with the Pacers. But so my first impression is to say 6 games with but 6 pretty close games.
Do you see, and obviously throughout all the years of NBA, do you see we haven't seen a team beat another team in the playoffs the way Cleveland did. Ever, by the way, ever.
No.
The last 2 games, the only competitive game was game 2. It was very close. And then, I say very close because I think Cleveland had to pull it out and win by 10. So it wasn't like close by 2, but I mean, it was close for that series. When I look back at the series, that was the closest game.
Yeah.
But the last 2 games were so terribly lopsided. And so not like I was watching because it was so terribly lopsided. Like I couldn't believe what was happening.
Yeah.
And I thought, it was like OKC Memphis kind of thing. Do you see now that they're playing, like, again, Indiana has the bigs, it has the shooters, it has all of these guys, and they played a great competitive series. What do you see? How do you see that playing out? Because I've always, my memory, and you could say you're a fool. My memory is when you beat a team like Cleveland did, you go into the first game and you're a little not ready for the competition.
Yeah. No, and that's what I'm thinking. There is a big difference between Miami and Indiana. It's a huge gap.
For those that are like, oh, Cavaliers are easily into the next round. They're not playing Miami, everybody.
Forget about where they fell in the standings. You're looking at a team in Indiana that, ascended last year, surprised a lot of people by getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. And it just continued to build off of that and grow this year. They got key players back. They made a couple tweaks, little minor tweaks in the roster, but they're a team that's been together, that has gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals together, versus a team and seems to be getting better, versus a team in Miami that, just lost one of their superstars, has a very mixed-matched roster, kind of like a bunch of mercenaries at this point. Tyler Hero, is he a superstar? Is he not a superstar? Like Bam, like, is he all NBA, or is he a little overrated? And then, a bunch of these moving parts. So there's a big difference. And I think Cleveland's got a great coach too. Kenny Atkinson's done an awesome job with Cleveland. They're there where they are, I think, large part because of him. But they could be very shocked when they step on the floor on Sunday night or Sunday afternoon, and they're dealing with a really, really fast run and gun, put up 20 points in a flash team like Indiana.
Do you see a game one as a possible steal for Indiana? Right
I
off the
think
bat.
that has to be the game plan for Indiana. Like, I mean, I know the game plan is to win every game, right? But like that, man, I would as a Indiana fan, if I were one, I'd really want that game one. I would really want that game one.
Did you hear the talk also? I thought it was interesting. The Miami players were kind of talking and alluding to Garland on Cleveland being a bad fit for them, and that they were exited and they were asked questions like, oh yeah, they're just a better team, and they're a better team when Garland's not playing. I thought Garland was a great player throughout the regular season. I don't know where that came from the other team, but I thought it was like kind of like, we're going to put some doubt in your mind as you go into the next series. I don't put a lot of...
That sounds like a bunch of guys that just lost just being bitter.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, to be fair, I did not think Garland was a good fit for them either. And if you, I don't know if you remember, but you know, the all off season, there was the expectation that Garland was getting traded because Mitchell and Garland just didn't work as a backcourt, and they were gonna find someone else who was a fit. They were gonna flip Garland, and a trade never materialized. And man, I think he proved them all wrong this year. I think they're fitting just fine. I think they're working great, and I think it's going to be a pattern that other teams are going to want to copy, having two, creators in the backcourt like that.
Here's my step back view if I'm going to be super positive about the series going 7 or the possibility of Indiana upsetting Cleveland. Here's what Cleveland has: smaller size in the front court than Indiana does. Indiana has a little bit bigger guys as far as the shooting guard are concerned and things of that nature. So where it's like, okay, Indiana can get their shots up and they can play a little bit more kind of draping kind of defense than I think Cleveland can. But to your point, Cleveland on the inside has a lot of... They didn't have this record for nothing. So they have legitimate defenders on the inside.
Absolutely.
But if you're Indiana, like if you can shut down the three or shut down that kind of aspect and really, force them into positions that they're not comfortable with, maybe that's how Indiana is able to spoil it. And the other thing is, I think you got to be really physical if you're Indiana. I felt the Bucks Indiana series was pretty physical. I think Miami and the Cleveland Cavaliers, that was not physical at all. If you were to tell me like Orlando and Boston was like the Knicks played a chippy series, Boston played a chippy series. This is the only one that my thought on game one is Indiana kind of got bumped and bruised. So they're coming in right away, like we're ready to bump and bruise. So is Cleveland ready for that kind of thing? That kind of intensity of a little more physical defense, less whistles, more of the... And if you're a smaller point guard, like we talked about, like I grew up with Nash, you got to get used to getting bumped and beat. You're not going to get all those calls anymore like in the regular season, and that really takes a toll on you. So now they finally face that off with Indiana. Like if you're Indiana, if you're being real physical with them, can you get to that game 7? Can you possibly pull a 6-game upset?
They got to start strong, and I think you make a great point about the physicality, and Indiana can do it. I mean, it's not just the Bucks series this year. Like they dealt with the last year. I mean, that was an advantage the Knicks were supposed to have against Indiana last year, was that they were a little bit tougher. They were a little bit strong. Now they had to do it without Randall. They had to do it, with OG Anunoby not being 100%. They had to do it without Mitchell Robinson. So that takes away, some of the toughness. But Indiana punched back. When the Knicks brought the physicality, Indiana withstood it. And you're right. I think Cleveland probably doesn't have the experience with that physicality the way that Indiana does. And so the combination of them getting off to a hot shooting, run and gun, scoring, high powered, high octane offense with some physicality could really throw off Cleveland to start the series. I think Cleveland will be smart enough, or the coach will be smart enough to make adjustments and to get them settled at some point in the series. And that's why I think winning early in this series is crucial for Indiana to have a chance.
Do you put any weight to the fact that Indiana won this regular season series with Cleveland 3-1?
I think you have to. And then I know that the playoffs are a different animal. I know that guys are playing more minutes. I know that the rotations are all shorter, but it's not nothing. It's not nothing that they were able to figure it out.
And the only close game was a 114-112 game where Indiana beat them. The rest of the games are not close, which is, again, kind of the product of the new NBA. You're not going to see a lot of close games, but in the playoffs, you tend to see that a little more. And then that goes back to who do you trust? Who's hitting the big shot? And I think that's the one thing that I saw with Indiana. As much as the Bucks fumbled, Indiana stepped up and hit the big shots at the right time. Cleveland hasn't even had to do. That's the other part about.
They haven't had to worry about that.
They haven't had to hit a single, like, oh my gosh, you got to hit the shot.
High pressure, yeah.
Nothing. So, like, so if I'm selling myself, which is what I'm doing, and for those that are watching, I like to sell my heart on what I want to see, or I sell, and then my brain tries to catch up to my heart.
Yeah.
I see Cleveland walking into the first game, and I can see that really being a shell shock of a game for them. And Indiana really being aggressive and being, again, the crowd's going to be there. They're in Cleveland. But I see this series legitimately being a real series, a real fight for Cleveland.
I think, yeah, my money's on Cleveland. I think they come out on top. I think it'll go 6 games, but I think it'll be close. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about Indiana. They are streaky. They are very, very streaky, and you'll see it in the context of a game, certainly in the context of a series. You'll see moments where they just look unstoppable on offense, and it's like, how does this team ever lose? And then, like, before long, you're like, oh, this is how they lose. Okay, they're not knocking down shots. They're, kind of, maybe they gas themselves running and gunning, who knows, but, they'll have those moments, and Cleveland is a team that will clobber you if you give them those moments. They're a team that if you loosen up the reins, watch out, cause things are gonna change real quick. So, but
when you look at the series, when you put a bow on it for everybody, you have Cavaliers in 6.
I say Cavaliers in 6.
Finishing them off at Indiana.
Finish them off in Indiana in a close game, and I think most games will be close. I could see either one of the teams having a blowout just because of the nature of, like, the shots aren't falling that day for one team and they're really flying for the other. But I think most of the series will be pretty close. I
could
see a lot of back and forth lead changes too.
I'm the opposite of you in this series. I believe it's going to happen in 6, but I feel like Indiana is going to be the one that wins it. I feel like last year they were tested. Last year they made a nice run.
Yeah.
Last year they really grew as a team, and I felt in the first round they kind of did that. The other thing I really liked about the first round is in the moments where you needed a bucket, they got it.
They did.
In the moments that they needed a closeout, they got it. And I know everyone can say, well, Cleveland can do that too. And Cleveland did that, and they proved it all season. You're correct, and they absolutely destroyed Miami. The problem is that Miami's would have been destroyed by probably all 4 of the teams that we're looking at.
Right.
And that's not a joke. And I think that Indiana, to me, when I look at basketball, the biggest thing is the closer. Who's closing out the game? Who's taking the shot? And my biggest thing that I like about Indiana is the guy closing out the shot is extremely, like, he's the height that I want. He has the shot. He can drive to the lane like he did. I mean, it's hard to stop. Does that make sense? Like, he's just, when I look at, like, Mitchell, excellent player, but I can drape him. I can get a 6. I can put 2 people on him. I can make him get rid of the ball. I feel like there are certain players that just don't. So the way that I look at the series is I see game 1, Indiana jumping on them. I see Indiana being the more physical team. I see Indiana winning that game. If Indiana loses game 1, I'm going to just say, well, I blew this whole thing. Because I just feel like Indiana has that kind of, like, rev your engine. And people can say, well, they struggled in game 5 at home when they should have just killed the Bucks. They didn't have these players. But closing teams out is difficult.
The worst thing that could happen for Indiana is to get out ahead of game one and then let it slip away. That would be really deflating for them.
But I could see that. That's an NBA thing.
I could see that happen.
That's an NBA thing. So I see Indiana, you see Cleveland. We both see it a 6-game series. We don't see it a 4 or 5. We certainly see it kind of going back and forth. I think that the biggest thing that I think the more physical NBA favors Indiana too. Just my little bit of experience. If they had more inline players that were, I just feel like the size of Indiana, I feel like they're kind of built for the more physical matchup. I like the streakiness that they are. I like the fact that they won the regular season 3-1. They're very confident against Cleveland. They're not walking into it going, uh-oh, it's Cleveland. And there's no aura. There's no I think the Boston Garden, I think there's that thing with the Boston Garden. No one goes to Cleveland and is like, uh-oh, we got to go into Cleveland.
It's true. Even when LeBron was there, it was like, it's just, I hate to, it sounds cruel, but it's just like a generic basketball arena. Just a generic location.
There's no ghost of greatness.
It's very just middle America, small town USA. Not small town, but
And Indiana Indiana is about as desperate as you can get for an NBA championship. That's the other thing that I feel like Cleveland got theirs with LeBron, and they won it. And so again, when you win one, you're like, "This is great, we won one."
The field house is no joke. Them Hoosiers love their basketball,
and the Indiana fans are going to be all in. So I see Indiana in 6. You see Cleveland in 6. We look forward to a much better, more competitive series than either of these teams got in the first round. And that's the start of the previews. That's the first one that we're doing for Indiana and the Cavs. I see the 1 seed going down, and you see the 1 seed moving on. The good thing is we disagree finally on the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, there we go. We got a little bit of a competition going.
All right. As always, that's Nolan. I am Brendan for Hoop and the Harm. Thanks for joining us for our episodes. Please subscribe. Please like. And thanks for all of your comments. And we'd like to hear who you side on. Cleveland, Indiana. Thanks, everybody.